You can be talented, you can be kind, you can be brilliant. But if no one is paying attention, the world will walk right past you. I know that sentence might make you uncomfortable. It did to me too the first time I learned it the hard way, because many of you were raised to believe that if you just work hard, stay humble, keep your head down and do the right thing, someone will eventually notice, that goodness will be rewarded, that merit will speak for itself. But here's the brutal truth. In the real world, silence doesn't equal humility. It often equals invisibility. And invisibility has never changed a single life. So today, I want to talk to you about attention, about power, about influence, not from ego, not from arrogance, but from responsibility. Because if you have something meaningful inside you, the world deserves to hear it. For the longest time, I believed that wanting to be seen was something I should apologize for. I was taught, directly and indirectly, that visibility was loud, that attention was ego, that being noticed somehow meant you were asking for more than your share. I believed that if my work was honest enough, if my intentions were pure enough, the world would eventually catch up. Someone would tap me on the shoulder and say, "We see you now." But life doesn't work that way. Here is the quiet truth no one prepares you for. Attention is not vanity. Attention is access. Access to opportunity. Access to conversation. Access to rooms where decisions are made. When you lack attention, your ideas stay trapped inside you. Your gifts don't travel. Your purpose never meets the people it was meant to serve. And it doesn't matter how talented you are, if your light never reaches the room. Think about every movement that ever changed the world, every voice that shaped culture, every leader who altered the direction of history. None of them whispered into the void and hoped for the best. They stepped forward. They claimed space. They allowed themselves to be seen, not because they wanted applause, but because they understood responsibility. Attention is the doorway through which impact enters. And when good people refuse to step into visibility, that doorway doesn't close. It simply opens for someone else. Often someone louder, less thoughtful, less grounded, less kind. This is where humility gets misunderstood. Humility is not hiding. Humility is not shrinking. Humility is not pretending your voice doesn't matter. True humility is knowing that what flows through you is bigger than you. And because it's bigger than you, it deserves to be shared. When you avoid attention out of fear, you're not being modest, you're being absent. And absence has consequences. There were moments in my life when I stayed quiet in rooms I had earned the right to speak in. I told myself I was being respectful. I told myself I was being patient. But deep down I was afraid. Afraid of being judged. Afraid of being misunderstood. Afraid that stepping forward would somehow expose me. What I didn't realize then was that staying silent was also a decision. One that cost me time. One that delayed growth. One that taught me that invisibility is not neutral, it's limiting. The world doesn't reward potential. It responds to presence. Attention doesn't mean shouting. It means showing up with intention. It means understanding that if you have a skill, a story, a lesson earned through pain and perseverance, it is not meant to stay locked inside your chest. Someone out there is waiting for the words you are too afraid to speak. Attention is not about being famous. It's about being reachable. Reachable by opportunity, reachable by collaboration, reachable by those who need what you carry. When you step into visibility with integrity, attention becomes a service. You're not saying, "Look at me." You're saying, "Here is what I've learned. Here is what might help you. Here is what I can contribute." And that changes everything. So if you've been hiding behind the comfort of hard work alone, hear this gently but clearly. Your effort deserves an audience. Your growth deserves witnesses. Your purpose deserves a platform. Even if that platform starts small, claiming attention doesn't make you arrogant. It makes you accountable. Because once you are seen, you are called to rise, to be consistent, to be responsible, to be real. And yes, visibility can be uncomfortable, but growth always is. The moment you stop apologizing for being seen, life begins to meet you with momentum. Attention is not the enemy of humility. Fear is. And when fear no longer leads, access follows. We often say power is dangerous, that it changes people, that it turns kind hearts cold and gentle souls sharp. We warn each other about it like it's a storm waiting to happen. Be careful, they say, power corrupts. But here is what life has taught me. Slowly and sometimes painfully, power doesn't change who you are. It reveals who you've been all along. Power is not a personality transplant. It's a mirror. When you have no influence, your flaws can hide. Your fears stay small. Your habits don't have consequences. But when responsibility grows, when eyes are on you, when decisions matter, when people depend on you, everything inside you gets louder. Your insecurity speaks faster. Your integrity speaks clearer. Your values speak whether you want them to or not. That's why chasing power without building character is so dangerous. You don't rise to the level of your ambition, you fall to the depth of your preparation. I've seen people blame power for what it exposed, but power didn't make them unkind, it simply removed a mask. It didn't create ego, it amplified it. It didn't invent selfishness, it gave it a stage. And that's the part we don't like to talk about, because it means responsibility starts long before recognition, long before the title, long before the platform, long before anyone calls your name. It starts in the quiet moments, the ones no one is watching, the choices you make when there's nothing to gain, the way you treat people who can do nothing for you, the way you respond when you're tired, unseen, or disappointed. Those moments are rehearsals. Life is always preparing you for rooms you haven't entered yet. Every small act of integrity is training. Every time you choose kindness over convenience, discipline over drama, truth over comfort, you're shaping the version of yourself that power will eventually reveal. And here's the humbling truth. Power will come in some form. Maybe not fame, maybe not leadership over millions, but influence arrives in different ways. A workplace, a family, a community, a moment where your decision affects more than just you. When that moment comes, you won't suddenly become wise, you'll simply become visible. That's why grounding matters. You need something deeper than applause holding you steady, something stronger than validation reminding you who you are. Faith, values, principles, these aren't decorations for success. They are anchors. Because power tests your patience. It tests your ego. It tests whether you remember where you came from when the world starts treating you differently. And the world will treat you differently. Doors open faster. Voices soften around you. People agree more than they should. That's when self-awareness becomes survival. You have to be brave enough to check yourself, to listen, to stay teachable, to surround yourself with people who tell you the truth, not what flatters you. Power without accountability is a dangerous echo chamber, but power rooted in humility becomes leadership. And humility again is not shrinking, it's knowing you're still human when the world tries to convince you otherwise. It's remembering that your worth is not measured by how many people listen, but by how deeply you listen in return. If you're dreaming of influence, ask yourself this gently. Who are you becoming when no one is clapping? Are you patient when things move slowly? Are you honest when shortcuts appear? Are you gracious when you're misunderstood? Because the version of you build in private will be the version revealed in public. Power doesn't ask if you're ready. It arrives when it arrives. And when it does, it will not create your character. It will expose it. So build now. Stay rooted now. Practice integrity now, so that when responsibility finds you, it doesn't break you, it recognizes you. Then let's keep going. Because now we talk about the part no one applauds. But everyone successful has survived. There is a season in every meaningful life where you are doing everything right, and nothing seems to be happening. You're working, you're growing, you're showing up with discipline and hope. And still, silence, no recognition, no momentum, no visible proof that your effort is landing anywhere. This is where most people quit. Not because they aren't capable, but because they misread the moment. Influence is built long before it is visible. What people call overnight success is usually a decade of quiet endurance. A stretch of time where you are practicing greatness in empty rooms, where your only audience is your own conscience, where you have to decide over and over again if the work is worth doing without applause. And this is where faith becomes practical. Because when no one is watching, belief is no longer theoretical. It's tested. You're no longer motivated by praise. You're driven by purpose. By an inner knowing that says, this matters, even if no one sees it yet. That's how influence is formed. Think of a tree. Before it ever reaches the sky, it spends years growing underground, roots spreading in darkness, searching for water, finding stability. No one celebrates that part, but without it, the tree doesn't survive the storm. If you feel unseen right now, it doesn't mean you're failing. It often means you're building roots. This season teaches you patience. It teaches you consistency. It teaches you to separate your identity from external validation. Because if you only show up when you're praised, your influence will be fragile. But if you learn to show, when no one notices, your influence becomes unshakable. There were moments in my life when I questioned myself deeply, when I wondered if my effort was misplaced, when doors stayed closed longer than I expected, when rejection felt personal. But looking back, those were not wasted years. They were training grounds. Every time I kept going without encouragement, I learned resilience. Every time I refined my craft without recognition, I learned excellence. Every time I chose discipline over despair, I learned trust. Trust in timing, trust in preparation, trust that growth happens quietly before it happens publicly. Influence doesn't start with being known, it starts with being reliable. Reliable to your values, reliable to your standards, reliable to the promise you made to yourself when you first dreamed. And here's the part that requires courage. You must resist the urge to rush visibility before you're ready to sustain it. Because visibility without preparation creates pressure you can't carry. And pressure reveals cracks before strength. So if life is slowing you down right now, it may be protecting you, teaching you, strengthening you in ways applause never could. Use this season wisely. Learn deeply. Practice relentlessly. Serve generously. Do the work as if the world is watching. Because one day it will be. And when that day comes, you won't panic. You won't scramble to prove yourself. You'll stand calmly in the space you earned. Because you've already met yourself in the quiet. That's the gift of invisible seasons. They remove ego. They build confidence that isn't borrowed. They teach you that your worth does not rise and fall with attention. So if you're feely, overlooked, don't harden your heart. Don't rush your journey. Don't measure your progress by likes, numbers, or applause. Measure it by alignment, by growth, by the strength you're developing when no one is clapping. Because when influence finally arrives, And it will. You won't be surprised by it. You'll recognize it and you'll be ready to carry it with grace. Then let's go further. Because now we touch the moment where growth asks you to choose between comfort and truth. There is a version of you the world will like very much. That version is agreeable, predictable, easy to digest. And there is another version of you, the honest one, the one who speaks when silence feels safer, the one who doesn't shapeshift to fit every room. Here is the hard truth. Being likable will keep you small. Being honest will set you free. Most people aren't afraid of failure. They're afraid of disapproval, afraid of being misunderstood, afraid that if they say what they really think, they'll lose belonging. So they edit themselves. They soften their edges. They trade truth for acceptance, and slowly, almost imperceptibly, they disappear. I've been there. I've stayed quiet when something inside me was asking to speak. I smiled when my values were being compromised. I've convinced myself that peace was more important than clarity, but peace built on silence is fragile, and clarity delayed becomes regret. Influence demands honesty, not cruelty, not ego, but clarity rooted in respect and self-respect. You cannot lead while apologizing for your voice. The moment you start living for approval, you hand your power away. Because approval is temporary. It shifts with trends, moods, and convenience. Had people love today, they may criticize tomorrow. But truth has weight, and weight builds trust. Being honest will cost you things. It will cost you invitations. It will cost you comfort. Sometimes it will cost you relationships, but it will never cost you yourself. And that matters more than being liked. The world doesn't change because people are pleasant. It changes because someone is brave enough to say, this isn't working anymore. Because someone chooses integrity over popularity. Honesty requires discernment, knowing when to speak and how. But silence out of fear is not wisdom. It's self-erasure. If you constantly shape your voice to avoid upsetting others, you'll end up betraying your own convictions. And over time, that betrayal hardens into resentment. You'll feel unseen, not because others don't see you, but because you've stopped showing up fully. Respect works differently than approval. Approval is given when you blend in. Respect is earned when you stand grounded, and respect lasts longer. The most influential voices in any room are not the loudest, they are the clearest. The ones who speak with alignment, the ones whose words are backed by action. When people sense that you won't abandon your values to be accepted, they listen differently. They may not always agree, but they trust. And trust is the foundation of influence. This doesn't mean becoming rigid or self-righteous. It means being anchored, open to learning but not desperate to be liked, kind but not invisible. You are allowed to evolve. You are allowed to say no. You are allowed to change your mind when you learn more. Honesty is not stubbornness. It's authenticity in motion. There will be moments when your truth creates distance. Let it. Not everyone is meant to walk every season with you. Growth sometimes requires outgrowing spaces that once felt safe. And that's okay, because the right people don't require you to shrink. They meet you at your full height. If you want influence, practice honesty now. In small ways, in everyday conversations, in how you honor your boundaries, in how you name what matters to you. Don't wait for a big stage to start telling the truth. Start where you are. Because freedom doesn't come from being liked by everyone. It comes from being aligned with yourself. And once you experience that freedom, you'll realize something powerful. You never needed approval. You needed courage. There is a quiet force behind every sustained life of impact. It doesn't trend. It doesn't get praised. It doesn't feel exciting. But without it, everything else collapses. Discipline. Talent might introduce you to the room. Attention might invite you inside. Honesty might help you speak. But discipline decides whether you stay. The world often mistakes discipline for restriction, as if it's punishment, as if it's a cage. But real discipline is devotion. It's love in action. It's saying, this matters enough for me to show up even when I don't feel like it. Because feelings are unreliable. Motivation comes and goes. But discipline stays. The most influential people I know are not the most gifted. They are the most consistent. They don't wait to be inspired. They build systems that carry them on the days inspiration is silent. They show up when it's boring, when it's repetitive, when it feels like nothing is moving, and they show up anyway. Discipline is faith with work boots on. It's choosing structure over chaos, routine over reaction, commitment over convenience. It's honoring your future self more than your present comfort. There were times I wanted to wait until I felt ready, until I felt confident, until the fear disappeared. But fear doesn't disappear before growth. It follows it. So discipline became my agreement with myself. A promise that I would keep going even when the applause stopped, even when the doubt got loud. Discipline is what protects your vision from your moods. Because moods change, vision matures. Every time you do the small, unglamorous work, you are casting a vote for the person you are becoming. You are building credibility with yourself. And self-trust is powerful. Without discipline, influence becomes accidental. With discipline, influence becomes sustainable. This is especially important when attention grows, because attention is demanding. It pulls at your time, your energy, your identity. Without discipline, you start reacting instead of leading. You drift instead of direct. Discipline keeps you grounded when the world speeds up around you. It helps you say no to distractions, disguised as opportunities. It helps you protect your craft. It helps you remember you started. And here's the truth. Many don't want to hear, discipline will cost you comfort. You'll wake up earlier than you want. You'll say no when yes would feel easier. You will repeat the basics long after they stop feeling new. But comfort never built anything lasting. Discipline also deepens humility. Because when you commit to daily effort, you realize how much there is still to learn. How growth is not a moment. It's a practice. And that practice becomes sacred. It becomes your offering. Your way of saying thank you for the gift you were given. You don't need to be extreme. You need to be consistent. Small actions, done daily, compound into quiet excellence. And one day people will call it effortless, but you'll know better. You'll know it was discipline that carried you through the days no one saw, the nights you doubted, the moments you chose responsibility over recognition. Discipline doesn't just support power, it keeps power from destroying you. Because it reminds you that you are still a student, still accountable, still growing. If you want to build something that lasts, build habits before you build hype, structure before spotlight, practice before praise. And when the world finally takes notice, you won't be scrambling to keep up. Then here's where everything shifts. Because up until now, the work has been deeply personal about your voice, your character, your discipline, your courage. But influence reaches its highest form when it stops being about you. Power feels exciting at first. It validates you. It affirms your effort. It finally tells you you mattered. And that feeling can be intoxicating if you're not careful. Because the danger isn't wanting influence. The danger is letting influence end with you. Real influence becomes meaningful only when it serves others. If your success feeds only your ego, it will always feel empty. No matter how high you climb, there will be a quiet hollowness you can't explain. Because fulfillment doesn't come from being admired. It comes from being useful. The most impactful people don't ask, how far can I go? They ask, who can I take with me? Service is what gives power a soul. And I don't mean grand gestures or public charity alone. I mean everyday awareness, the decision to make space, to listen, to lift someone else's voice instead of always amplifying your own. True influence is generous. It creates room at the table instead of guarding the seat. It opens doors instead of closing them behind you. It remembers what it felt like to be overlooked. Because the moment you forget where you came from, influence starts turning into entitlement. There were times in my life when success came faster than I expected, when opportunities multiplied, when attention followed me into rooms I once dreamed of entering. And in those moments, I had to ask myself a hard question. What is this for? Not what can I gain, but what can I give? Because if you don't answer that question intentionally, ego will answer it for you. Service keeps you grounded. It reminds you that your talent is not owned, it's entrusted. That your voice isn't yours alone, it's borrowed for a season. And borrowed things must be returned with care. Influence used only for self-preservation eventually isolates you, but influence used to uplift creates connection, community, legacy. And legacy is different from success. Success is measured by achievement. Legacy is measured by impact. Legacy is the teacher who believed in you before you believed in yourself. The mentor who shared wisdom without competition. The leader who didn't just lead, but protected. Ask yourself this, when people encounter you, do they leave feeling smaller or stronger? Because influence always leaves a trace. It either drains or it empowers. Serving others doesn't weaken your authority, it strengthens it. People trust leaders who don't need to dominate, who don't need to remind everyone of their position, who lead with steadiness instead of superiority. And service doesn't mean self-sacrifice to exhaustion. It means alignment. Knowing that your growth and the growth of others are not opposites. They are connected. When you lift others, you expand yourself. When you create opportunities, you multiply influence. There is a quiet joy that comes from watching someone rise because you refuse to hoard knowledge, access, or encouragement. A joy deeper than applause, more lasting than recognition. That joy is purpose speaking back to you. And here's something important. Service doesn't wait for permission or perfection. You don't need to be at the top to serve. You serve where you are, with what you have as you grow. Influence is practiced in small moments, long before it's recognized in big ones. The way you speak to people when you're stressed, the way you credit others when things go well, the way you show up when there's nothing to gain. Those moments shape the kind of leader you're becoming. Because one day, people won't just listen to your words, they'll watch your example. An example is the loudest form of influence. So let your success mean something beyond comfort. Let your power be gentle enough to lift and strong enough to protect. Let your voice make room for voices still finding their courage. That's when influence stops being temporary. That's when it becomes legacy. And now, let me leave you here. Not with noise, not with pressure, but with truth. There will always be a voice telling you to wait, to be smaller, to be quieter, to be more acceptable. But faith was never about hiding. Faith was never about fear dressed as humility. Faith is movement. Faith is obedience to the calling inside you, even when the path is unclear. Faith is trusting that if you were given the vision, you were also given the responsibility. You are not here by accident. Your voice is not random. Your journey is not wasted. Every season you survived was shaping you. Every delay was strengthening you. Every moment of doubt was teaching you where to place your trust. Not in approval, not in applause, but in purpose. Stand where you are. Serve with what you have. Speak with the courage you've been building all along. Don't it wait for permission to matter. Don't wait for validation to begin. Don't it wait until you feel fearless. Move with faith. Because the world doesn't need a perfect version of you. It needs an honest one, a disciplined one, a courageous one. And remember this, always, what is meant for you will rise to meet you when you rise to meet it. Walk forward with faith, act with integrity, and leave every place stronger than you found it. That is how a life becomes powerful. That is how influence becomes legacy.